Hello everyone, welcome back to another video in the beautiful outdoors. Um, this is going to be a kind of a continuation video on my last one, giving some recommendations about the 5 books that I read from Mexican authors between the last September and this, so during last year basically. And I forgot to mention which are the books that I will be reading for the next year. So between today basically and next year's September. So I'm just gonna go over some recommendations based on the books that I want to read. As I said, I don't know if I said it or not, but I want to be supporting and promoting Mexican voices, especially more contemporary ones. Some of these authors are popular enough that they've been translated to English. Some of them are, I think, only available in Spanish, but I will still promote these authors because some of you maybe speak Spanish, and then some of these people might eventually become translated, and also maybe some of their works are not known, but other works, maybe their more popular works, are translated. So I don't know, I think it's important to be promoting these voices. So let's just get started. And the first one is a very easy pick, and that is El Invencible Verano de Liliana by Cristina Rivera Garza. This one is actually very popular, and I know there is a translation. This book actually won last year the Booker Prize, the International Booker Prize, in the category of autobiography, I think. No, sorry, it says it here. It's the Pulitzer Prize. So, I mean, if you know about prizes, the Pulitzer, I think, is quite popular, or at least very important, and she won it last year. So, we're very happy for her. This story follows a woman that I'm pretty sure has a similar life experience as the author herself, and she's dealing with the disappearance of her younger sister. This is actually something that happened to the author, something she lived, and I think she fought a lot against the system, trying to denounce this act of violence and trying to find justice for her own sister. I'm not sure how much of that is in the novel, but I know that that is the author's personal experience, and I'm sure there is going to be a lot of discussions about the injustice of uh, and the lack of efficiency, I guess, of the entire like police system, and how a lot of crimes are reported and they've never, are considered seriously. Especially, I think in Mexico we have a terrible history with a lot of feminicides and women disappearing, and then when people report it, the authorities don't do anything for whatever reason. And so I think this is going to be a very tough read, handling these sense of lack of justice just in general, but also I would assume a woman trying to find her own uh, peace. So that is El Invencible Verano de Liliana, and I will put in the screen somewhere what the name of the book is in English. And after that, I'm going to continue with a non-fiction book. This is a collection of, or an anthology, I would guess, of essays called Tsunami. And this is the first of these. I think there are now 2 or 3, at least 2, of these Tsunami anthologies. And these are, as I said, an anthology of essays, all by Mexican women. And they are, as far as I understand, all dealing with different sides of feminism. They're not all authors, but a lot of them are. Actually, I'm pretty sure one of the essays, here, Cristina Rivera, is by the same author as the previous book, by Cristina Rivera Garza. So it's going to be really interesting reading. Oh, shit. Another ant bit me. I should have learned my lesson. Anyways. But it's going to be interesting reading essays from women that have, I think, very different perspectives from their backgrounds, but also how they, I mean, at least the back of the book says that they have very different takes on feminism. And they're all contemporary women. They're all, or most of them, I would assume, are alive. I have read things from a couple of them. For instance, another one, and this is interesting, another writer is Veronica Guerrer Bisecci, which I talked about in my last video. She is the author of Conjunto Vacío. So it's really cool to see these brilliant women talking a bit more seriously, I guess, or at least like in a non-fiction way, and just hearing what they think about different topics. I think it's going to be fascinating. And as I said, I'm really happy that there are multiple of these. So I think it's also going to be a perfect place or way to get to know other women that are working in some way or another in like art forms, and you can always discover and find new voices that you want to follow. So maybe I also can find more books by these female authors that I want to read later. So that is very exciting. And this is one that I would assume is not translated, but I think when I read it and I make a more in-depth review about the essays, I will try to make sure to shout out some of the content, or at least some of the authors here that have other essays or pieces of work that have been translated, so that you can consume their work even if you don't speak Spanish. But at least for now, I don't recognize all of them, unfortunately. And yeah, I don't know. I'll try to look for that. So that is Tsunami, and this is, by the way, all I think edited together or put together by Gabriela Jauregui. So also shout out for her. I think she also writes the prologue, and I'm pretty sure she's a editor of the other two Tsunami collections. So yeah, also shout out for her for finding and putting together these interesting and like challenging collections of female and feminist literature. So that's that. And then the third one I am really interested or like intrigued to read is Aura Garcia Junco's Mar de Piedra. This is a book that I know less about in comparison to the other ones. I know that this is set in Mexico City in actually 2025. So hopefully I get to this before the end of this year, because always reading like futuristic or dystopic sci-fi works that are written like in the story they're set in the future and then you're in that future, I think it's always kind of trippy. So yeah, I want to read this in this year. But as I said, this is or if you didn't guess, this is a piece of science fiction, but I think leaning more towards the dystopia. And I think we follow three characters in particular. One is a university professor. I think her name is Julia. And then there is also a alcoholic, and then um, a young teenager. I don't know if her name is mentioned, but there is something about like, I mean, the title of the story, Mar de Piedra, like Sea of Stones, I think is referencing something about like statues of people that have been disappearing, and there's social unrest, and there's something about like maps that, or maybe like a cult or some kind of like map that if you are a particular person that can read these maps, you can find like hidden truths. I don't know, like I'm just making some just reading some words from the back, but I love reading sci-fi sets in Mexico, especially Mexico City. I think it's a city that has so much like quirky and like contradictory and crazy things, both like in good and bad ways. So I feel like it's a perfect setting for like sci-fi stories. And I think when I saw this, or I saw this recommended in a list of like science fiction from Mexican authors, and because it's set in Mexico City, I thought about this collection of, or also an anthology of short. No, it is a collection. I thought about this collection of short stories, Ansibles Perfiladores y otras máquinas de ingenio. That name is a mouthful. That I read last year, and so honestly, I just like saw it, and I don't know, it was recommended and it sounded interesting, so I just got it. So those three are my top three priorities for the next year, and then for the last two, I want to have some wiggle room, partly because I don't have any more like Mexican books in my physical TBR. but I mean, obviously, I can use the library, and there are quite a lot of books that I can't find here, so I think that's fine. But it's also nice to have some wiggle room because then I can just pick some books based on what sounds interesting. But I have thought of two potential reads, and I'm just gonna talk about them really quickly. So the first, and they're actually both kind of connected, which is kind of cool. So the first one is called Pedro Páramo, which is a classical piece of literary Mexican fiction. This is by Juan Rulfo, and I think the story follows like a man that arrives to this place, this like town, looking for his dad, and I think everyone in this town has the same name, like the name of his dad. I think that's kind of the premise. It's quite a short book, very very famous. This one definitely exists in English and probably like a lot of other languages. And Juan Rulfo is a Mexican author that is considered to be kind of in the early waves of magical realism. And just like a tiny note on that, because I see magical realism being used a lot in ways that are, I think, might not be as true to what it is. And I'm not here to be like the genre police or anything, but I don't know, just like don't don't see this maybe as educating, but I don't know, just sharing some information. So magical realism is a wave of art and like a lot of literature that started in Latin America. And even though a lot of people claim that Gabriel Garcia Marquez is like the father of magical realism, there's actually a lot of writers that even before him had already started with similar themes and like artistic choices that are what makes this genre what it is. And I feel like now it's used a lot to just talk about speculative pieces of fiction where maybe there's something in the story that is not apparently clear if it's like real or if it's fictitious. Um, but I mean, while that is definitely something that is part of magical realism, it's not the same thing. And I think there is a very big like historical influence that seeps into what his magical realism is, with a lot of the dictatorships and like wars that we had in Latin America. So there are a lot of like themes of independence and like um, also just like absurdity and how some systems just don't work, or we just kind of continue with the things that we've built even though they make no sense. So I mean, I'm not an expert, but I just wanted to say that magical realism is not just anything that has like speculative things that are not like clear if they're happening or not. I think there's more to that. But anyways, Juan Rulfo is a Mexican author who was writing, I think, before Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and so he, I think, is to a certain extent kind of considered to be part of this movement. And Pedro Paramo is definitely his kind of magnus opera, or at least his most famous uh, work. And so I am just interested in reading it because it's kind of a classic. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's also going to be one that I will easily find here in Sweden, which is good. And then the last one is going to be Los Recuerdos del Porvenir by Elena Garro. This is also a really, really important piece of fiction that I'm pretty sure is translated. I will put the name here on the screen somewhere. Um, Elena Garro is a Mexican author who was tragically, I don't know, I guess forgotten by history for a long time because um, she was married to Octavio Paz, I think is his name. I hope I have this right. So Octavio Paz was um, her husband, and he is a super famous author. I think he even won the Nobel Prize of Literature. And there's a lot of like speculation about how much he wrote himself versus how much he kind of stole from his wife Elena Garro. But she has done so much for like Mexican literature, and she has published so much. Like, and I think nowadays, or like kind of in the last couple of decades, uh, we've been trying to like recover and like shine more light on her work and her own geniusness, and how she was kind of played dirty by history and a very very misogynistic system, and to the point where, I mean, allegedly, some of the things that Octavio Paz wrote and took claim for were actually her ideas, or I don't know, her writing. So, anyways, this is a very, very important woman, and I've actually read a play from her, because she also wrote like theater plays, which was super cool. I don't know how it's called, but it was about like a couple of like people that were kind of dead, and they're not like, the whole play is set inside of a tomb, and they're all kind of talking about the tomb getting opened. But anyways, Los Recuerdos del Porvenir is, I think, oftentimes compared to Cien Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude, because the premise, I think, is at least a bit similar. Like, we're dealing a lot with a isolated town that is, I think, not a real town in Mexico, and it's a town that is kind of isolated slash abandoned. There is like military presence in this town, and you're kind of following characters trying to, uh, like, living in this system, trying to break this system, and just how everyday life works in this place. So a bit like 100 Years of Solitude, but this book is actually a predecessor. So it was published before, and as I said, like, I think a lot of the misogynisticness of society seeped into how, like, Gabriel Garcia Marquez is now claimed as like the father of magical realism, where when we have authors like Elena Garro, who published, for instance, Los Recuerdos del Porvenir before, and I don't know, I think are not as popular or acclaimed as they should. So I'm just really, really interested in like reading this story. I hope this was interesting. I hope you got some good ideas, and yeah, let's keep promoting and celebrating Mexican voices, especially female voices and contemporary voices. A lot of these authors are alive, so I think it's the perfect time to be reading these stories, and yeah, just making these authors more known. And yeah, I hope more people can consume these stories, learn more about Mexico from like a new perspective. And if you've read any of these authors or these books, or if you have any recommendations, please let me know. And yeah, I'll see you. Well, at least with these books, I will probably do a checking in 1 year and let you know what I thought. But maybe they will also like go into other videos, but we'll see. But yeah, thank you for listening and have a great day. Bye bye.